Florida, a name that has long been synonymous with sunshine, sandy beaches, and the promise of escape. For decades, the state has thrived on an image carefully built around leisure, luxury, and limitless opportunity. From the pastel streets of Miami to the magic of Orlando's theme parks, Florida became more than just a destination. It was an industry, an empire, a global brand. But in 2025, the story of Florida's tourism is shifting dramatically. Behind the palm trees and vacation packages lies a collapse that is unfolding in real time. And for the first time in generations, experts are warning that Florida could be facing its worst tourism year on record. So, what happened? How did a state that seemed untouchable, a magnet for millions of visitors from around the world, suddenly find itself in crisis? To understand this collapse, we need to peel back the glossy surface of Florida's marketing campaigns and look at the forces quietly tearing away at the foundation of its most important industry. The signs are everywhere. Entire rental communities that once brimmed with Canadian snowbirds are half empty. Hotels that used to operate at near capacity are now slashing rates just to fill rooms. Cruise terminals that once saw record-breaking traffic are reporting fewer bookings, and beaches once crowded with tourists are eerily quiet. The numbers are staggering. Industry analysts estimate that Florida's long-term Canadian visitors, a cornerstone of its seasonal economy, have dropped by over 40%. That represents billions in lost revenue. And it's not just international travelers. Domestic tourism, once considered a reliable buffer, is slowing as inflation and rising costs push American families to seek cheaper alternatives closer to home. But here's the critical detail. Florida's collapse isn't being driven by one single factor. It's not simply an economic slowdown or a bad hurricane season. This is a convergence, a perfect storm of political tension, safety concerns, environmental stress, and shifting global priorities. Each issue alone would be a challenge. Together, they're rewriting the story of Florida's identity. As we explore this crisis, we'll uncover how a state built on vacations is now struggling with reputation, why foreign governments are quietly advising against travel, how the very industries that once defined Florida's charm, citrus groves, theme parks, and beaches, are becoming symbols of fragility, and what all of this means for the millions of workers, families, and businesses whose livelihoods depend on visitors walking through Florida's doors. This is not just the story of one state. It's a warning, a case study in how quickly paradise can unravel when trust, safety, and stability vanish. If Florida's beaches and theme parks once symbolized freedom, fun, and escape, today they symbolize something very different. In 2025, a series of official travel advisories has reshaped how the world views the Sunshine State. And for international visitors, particularly Canadians and Europeans, those warnings carry weight. One of the most devastating blows came quietly, not from a hurricane or economic downturn, but from Canada's federal government. In early 2025, Canada added Florida to its Tier 2 caution list, a designation normally reserved for destinations facing political instability, rising crime, or public health concerns. The warning cited growing levels of gun violence, mounting healthcare risks, and increased political tension. For Canadian snowbirds who once spent entire winters in Florida, the message was clear: think twice before booking. The impact was immediate. Canadian insurance providers, who often underwrite extended stays abroad, began to quietly pull coverage for long-term Florida trips. Without insurance, retirees, a group that once represented billions in annual spending, simply stopped coming. The empty rental condos in Naples, Sarasota, and Fort Lauderdale tell the story better than any statistic. Entire neighborhoods that once thrived on seasonal visitors now sit in silence,
Their local businesses starved of the income that kept them alive. But Canada wasn't the only country raising red flags. The European Union has also issued updated guidance, citing both public safety concerns and environmental instability. Florida's hurricane seasons have grown increasingly destructive, leaving infrastructure in doubt and adding another layer of uncertainty for foreign visitors. Families who once saw Florida as a guaranteed getaway are now second-guessing. Is it worth the risk when other destinations, Mexico, Portugal, the Caribbean, offer sun, safety, and lower costs? These advisories do more than redirect travelers. They reshape reputation. Florida is no longer just marketed as America's playground. It's being branded internationally as a place of unpredictability. And in the tourism industry, perception is everything. A reputation lost is harder to rebuild than a storm-damaged resort or a closed theme park. For decades, Florida thrived because the world believed it was safe, stable, and welcoming. But in 2025, that belief is unraveling. And when confidence collapses, bookings collapse with it. So if politics and warnings are pulling international visitors away, what about Florida's most iconic attractions? Are Disney World, Universal, and Miami Beach enough to hold the state together?
For decades, Florida's crown jewels have been its theme parks and beachfront cities, global icons that drew millions regardless of political climate or economic downturn. Walt Disney World, Universal Studios, Miami Beach, the Florida Keys. These weren't just attractions, they were symbols of stability, brands so strong that many believed they could weather any storm. But in 2025, even these giants are beginning to show cracks. Take Orlando. The city once boasted record-breaking attendance, with Disney and Universal welcoming over 70 million visitors annually before the pandemic. But today, attendance is slipping. Rising ticket prices, combined with higher airfare and insurance hurdles, are making Florida vacations less accessible to international families. For Canadians and Europeans in particular, the math no longer adds up. A trip that once felt like a rite of passage now feels like a luxury reserved for the few. Inside the parks, the picture is equally troubling. Operational costs have surged. Heat waves are forcing early ride closures. Labor shortages are leading to longer lines and reduced hours. And with hurricanes battering infrastructure year after year, the reliability of a Florida vacation feels less certain than ever before. Even Disney, a company known for ironclad optimism, has begun to quietly acknowledge unpredictable market headwinds in its Florida division. Meanwhile, Florida's famous beaches, long considered a backbone of Florida's tourism machine, are battling their own crisis. Coastal erosion, rising sea levels, and algae blooms are transforming stretches of shoreline that were once pristine into unstable, even hazardous destinations. In Miami Beach, storm surges have forced local authorities to spend millions reinforcing seawalls and pumping sand back onto vanishing beaches. Visitors who arrive expecting paradise are instead greeted with construction zones, murky waters, and warnings about unsafe swimming conditions. Then there's the cruise industry, long considered a backbone of Florida's tourism machine. Ports in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Tampa once thrived with daily departures, but with travel warnings and economic uncertainty, bookings from Canadian and European travelers have plunged. Some cruise lines have even begun shifting their fleets toward alternative hubs in the Caribbean and Mexico, quietly reducing Florida's dominance. When the icons begin to stumble, the ripple effects spread fast. Local hotels, restaurants, and shops that depend on overflow tourism feel the decline most acutely. For workers, many of whom earned modest wages in service roles, every drop in attendance is another lost paycheck. If the theme parks, beaches, and cruise terminals can't shield Florida from collapse, then where can the state turn?
When we think of Florida's economy, the spotlight almost always falls on theme parks and beaches.
But beneath the surface lies another foundation: agriculture, housing, and the vast service workforce that keeps the tourism machine alive. In 2025, these pillars are no longer holding steady. They are cracking, and in some cases, collapsing. Start with agriculture. Florida's citrus industry, once the pride of the state, is now on the brink. Disease outbreaks, pesticide disputes, and rejected exports have left farmers struggling to survive. Canada, a critical buyer of Florida oranges and juice, has turned away major shipments over safety violations. Warehouses are filling with unsold fruit, prices are plummeting, and thousands of seasonal jobs are vanishing. For small farming towns, the loss is not abstract. It is visible in shuttered packing plants, empty trucks, and families abandoning land that sustained them for generations. Then there's housing. For decades, Florida's real estate market thrived on a simple formula: demand fueled by retirees, investors, and seasonal residents. But in 2025, that demand is faltering. With Canadian snowbirds staying home and international buyers pulling back, entire condo communities now sit half-empty. What was once a thriving cycle, foreign investors buying property, retirees renting for the winter, locals employed to maintain and service those units, is now reversing. Prices are wobbling, mortgage defaults are rising, and developers are quietly shelving new projects. The service economy, too, is feeling the fallout. Hotels, restaurants, and entertainment venues depend on a vast workforce of servers, cleaners, and tour operators. Yet, as tourism declines, these workers are often the first to lose hours or jobs. Many live paycheck to paycheck, without the cushion to weather prolonged downturns. The ripple effect spreads quickly. Less income means fewer local purchases, which in turn squeezes small businesses already under pressure. And then there's the storm no one can predict, but everyone fears: hurricanes. Each season brings the threat of billion-dollar destruction. Insurance companies are hiking premiums or abandoning Florida altogether, making it harder for families and businesses to recover. In 2025, climate stress isn't a future challenge, it's a present reality. Tourism was always Florida's bright face to the world, but behind that smile lies an economy showing the same fragility. If visitors are leaving, if agriculture is faltering, if housing is unstable, what future does Florida face?
Florida's story has always been one of reinvention. From swampland transformed into beachfront resorts to orange groves replaced by sprawling suburbs, the state has thrived on its ability to reshape itself to meet demand. But in 2025, the challenge is unlike anything Florida has faced before. The very pillars of its identity, sunshine, safety, and stability, are now under question. The data tells a stark truth. International visitors are down dramatically. Canadian snowbirds, once the dependable lifeblood of Florida's winters, have vanished in unprecedented numbers. European travelers are redirecting to safer, more affordable destinations. Even domestic families are tightening their wallets, choosing smaller vacations closer to home. At the same time, Florida's costs are rising, from insurance premiums to food and housing. For the first time in decades, the equation that made Florida irresistible no longer adds up. The deeper question is whether Florida can pivot. Some voices argue that the state must diversify, investing in industries beyond tourism and agriculture, embracing technology, green energy, or healthcare. Others believe the solution lies in doubling down, marketing harder, cutting deals, and fighting to rebuild Florida's global reputation as a premier destination. But both strategies face the same obstacle: time. Recovery in tourism doesn't happen overnight. Reputation, once damaged, lingers in the global imagination long after the beaches are rebuilt or the headlines fade. And then are the looming forces Florida cannot control. Climate change continues to raise seas, erode coastlines, and intensify hurricanes. Political divisions show no sign of easing, keeping the state in the global spotlight for reasons that discourage rather than attract. Even if Florida manages to stabilize its tourism numbers, these vulnerabilities remain, casting shadows over the future. So what does 2025 represent? For some, it is a breaking point, a year that will be remembered as Florida's great unraveling when paradise turned fragile. For others, it may be a turning point, the moment Florida was forced to confront uncomfortable truths and reinvent its economy for survival. But one fact is undeniable. The Florida of postcards, brochures, and theme park commercials is fading. What rises in its place remains uncertain. For the millions who depend on tourism for their livelihoods, the question is not abstract, it is urgent. Can Florida rewrite its story, or has the collapse already begun to define it? Because in the end, this isn't just Florida's crisis. It's a warning to every destination that builds its future on the illusion of permanence. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more surprising content. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.